Her daughter-in-law snatched the cake plate mid-bite and called it a formality. Gloria Mayfield, retired caterer and grandmother of one, didn't blink. By Friday, Courtney's name was off the deed, the locks were changed, and the guest house was repurposed for strangers, not squatters. Gloria had spent a decade keeping family ties from unraveling. Now she was cutting them herself. And when Courtney came demanding her share, the rental listing answered first. Booked. No vacancy. Before we begin, may I ask, where in this big, beautiful world are you listening from? It's always a quiet honor to know who's sharing this space. Drop it in the comments and don't forget to subscribe. The Mayfield family dining room still looked like it belonged to someone who believed in Sunday manners. Hand-stitched table runners, matching candle holders, and bone china passed down from women who ironed napkins for supper. But tonight, there was no warmth at that table, just forced smiles and carefully measured silences, the kind that settle like a second skin over long-standing tension. Gloria sat at the head, upright in the same spindle-back chair she had used for decades. Her plate in front of her was nearly cleared, save for the final few bites of hummingbird cake. She had baked it that morning, crushed pineapple folded gently into ripe banana batter, toasted pecans, and cream cheese frosting that held its shape like dignity should. She didn't eat fast anymore. She liked to savor the end of things. The scrape of Courtney's chair broke the stillness. She reached across the table with a practiced smile that didn't quite reach her eyes and, with one smooth motion, slid Gloria's dessert plate away, mid-bite, mid-sentence, mid-memory. "You're done, right?" Courtney asked, too casually. Her voice had the sweetness of honey left out too long, crystallized and sharp. Tamrin, who had been stirring her tea without drinking it, froze. The spoon clinked once against the rim, then went still. Devon, seated beside his wife, shifted awkwardly but said nothing. He glanced down at his phone, as if a notification might save him from having to pick a side. Shirley Lane, sitting across from Tamrin, lowered her wineglass with deliberate calm and blinked slowly at the scene, taking in every detail. Gloria didn't reach for the plate. She didn't raise her voice. She simply folded her hands in her lap and looked across the table at Courtney with a gaze as unreadable as winter sky. Neither cloudy nor clear, just patient. "I suppose I am," she said, her voice steady. No trace of bitterness. No apology, either. Courtney let out a tight little laugh as she took a bite of the cake. Still moist. Guess you haven't lost your touch yet." No one laughed with her. Devon began stacking plates in an attempt to break the tension, avoiding eye contact with anyone. Tamrin stood up, muttered something about checking on the kettle, and slipped into the kitchen. Shirley followed a beat later, but not before letting her eyes linger just long enough on Gloria to signal that she'd seen it all. In the kitchen, Tamrin stood at the sink with her back to the door, shoulders rigid. The faucet ran, but no dishes were being washed. When Gloria entered behind her, she didn't speak right away. She simply reached out and turned off the water. Tamrin's voice was low. "She took your plate." "She took a plate," Gloria replied. "Not mine." "But you were still eating." Gloria rested a hand gently on her granddaughter's shoulder, steady as a levee. "And now I'm finished." Shirley came in next, shaking her head. "That woman is out of line, Gloria." "Has been." "But that right there? That wasn't just rude. That was a message." "I heard it," Gloria said, eyes on the far window where the porch light had flickered to life. "Loud and clear." Shirley stepped closer, her voice dropping. "You still got the co-title on that extension, don't you?" Gloria turned to face her, her expression unreadable, but her spine straight as ever. "For now." There was a beat of silence. Shirley's eyes tightened, knowing exactly what that meant. Tamrin looked between them, a question on the edge of her lips that she didn't ask. Back in the dining room, laughter rose faintly. Courtney's voice, now animated, telling a story to no one in particular. Gloria didn't seem to notice. She walked past the kitchen island and toward the side hallway, where a soft chime sounded from the wall-mounted landline. The voicemail light blinked once. She pressed play. The voice came through low and calm. "Gloria, it's Ellis. I went through the documents you sent over. Call me back tonight. There's something you need to see." She stood very still. Her hands remained at her sides, but her breath deepened almost imperceptibly. She stared out the kitchen window into the garden. Her garden, and the silence grew thick around her like humid Oklahoma dusk. Behind her, the faint clatter of forks and artificial laughter continued. But the next move wasn't going to come from that dining room. Not anymore. The next morning brought that still kind of Oklahoma quiet, the kind where the wind hasn't yet decided which direction to blow, and even the birds seem to wait for someone else to make the first move. Gloria sat alone in the sunroom, the legal folder opened wide across the table in front of her, papers spread like a deck of cards waiting to be played. Light filtered through the lace curtain and caught the edge of her reading glasses, which she adjusted slowly as she scanned the header on the original property deed. Her name stood alone in the first line, Gloria M. Mayfield, not co-signed, not contingent, not shared. She let out a long, even breath, part relief, part rage, softened by time. It was still hers. The house, the title, the legacy, still hers in all the ways that mattered. But then, like a stain spreading beneath clean water, her eyes drifted to the addendum. The guest extension, a separate signature page, co-signed 5 years ago. Not in ceremony, not in agreement, just pressure. Courtney had stood in her kitchen that day wearing expensive heels and too much perfume, tossing words like easier for taxes and we're family, this is just a formality. Devin, as always, hovered nearby, watching the floor tiles like they might crack under him. Back then, Gloria had wanted peace more than control. She had signed with the kind of reluctant smile women her age were taught to wear when they were saying yes to something they didn't believe in. Now, she knew better. She picked up the phone and dialed. Ellis answered after the first ring. "Morning, Gloria." "I need to hear you say it plain," she said. No time for pleasantries. "Can I take her off?" There was a pause on the line, brief but dense. "Yes, you have full title to the main house and partial co-ownership of the extension, but based on the circumstances and the documentation you've given me," she heard the faint rustle of papers as he double-checked. "Yes, Gloria. You can revoke the shared ownership. You have cause." She closed her eyes, just for a moment. "Then let's begin." The click of the receiver felt final, like a courtroom gavel hitting wood. By noon, the dining table was covered with folders, zip pouches, and receipts. She moved with quiet focus, sorting a decade's worth of tax filings, appliance repairs, water bills, and contractor invoices into tidy piles. Each one told its own part of the story. A faucet Courtney had insisted needed replacing, the luxury tile she'd demanded for her guest bath, the $1,400 stove hood she'd ordered without asking. Every penny had Gloria's name on it, every page proof she'd paid. Tamron arrived without being asked. She knocked once, then let herself in the back door carrying a scanner, her expression a mask of calm, but her eyes sharp. "You want these digitized?" she asked, already setting up. Gloria nodded. "Scanned, stamped, and notarized. One file for Ellis, one for me." Tamron said nothing more. She took her seat at the far end of the table and began feeding documents into the machine, glancing at the monitor as if double-checking for ghosts. A soft buzz broke the silence. Gloria's cell phone vibrated across the polished oak. She glanced at the screen. Devin. She hesitated, then answered, keeping her voice neutral. "Yes? Hey, Mom." Devin's voice was overly casual, like someone testing thin ice. "Just checking in. Everything okay over there?" Gloria looked out the window, her eyes settling on the garden gate, slightly ajar, swaying with the wind. "Fine," she said. "Why do you ask?" "No reason, really," he replied too quickly. "Just, you seemed quiet last night." "I'm always quiet, Devin. You just stopped noticing." A long silence passed on the other end of the line. Then, "Okay. Well, just let us know if you need anything." Gloria ended the call without saying goodbye. Tamron didn't look up from her task, but her voice was steady. "He knows something's coming." Gloria opened a new folder and began slipping in the last of the categorized receipts. "Let him guess. That's part of the lesson." They worked in tandem, the sound of the scanner punctuating the air like the ticking of a courtroom clock. The scent of cinnamon, crushed pineapple, and browning sugar filled the kitchen like a memory Gloria wasn't ready to let anyone else hold. Her hands moved with quiet precision, folding ripe banana into the batter, scraping the bowl like muscle memory. She didn't rush, didn't glance at the clock. Hummingbird cake wasn't just a recipe, it was a ritual. And rituals properly done weren't for show. They were for war. The cake rose perfectly, as it always did. No shortcuts, no substitutions. She let it cool on the rack while she wrapped 6 plates in wax paper, placing each one into the floral tins she reserved for neighbors and church ladies. She didn't need to be kind today, but she needed to be seen being kind. Tamron entered just as the last tin was sealed. She stood near the doorway, one foot still outside like she wasn't sure she wanted to be part of this moment. "So," Tamron said, eyeing the tins on the counter. "Peace offering or distraction?" Gloria didn't flinch. She placed the final label on the top of a tin, neat cursive, just her initials. "Neither," she said without turning. "It's cover." Tamron blinked, then nodded slowly. She didn't ask what it was cover for. She didn't need to. By the time the tins were delivered, door to door, handed off with the same smile Gloria used when signing checks or hosting baby showers, Ellis had already filed the first round of paperwork. A quiet filing, partial revocation only, no announcements, no warnings, just the beginning of something that could not be undone. At his office, tucked between an insurance agency and a faded chiropractor's sign, Ellis leaned over the counter and stamped the folder himself. He slid the packet into a manila envelope and handed it to Shirley without a word. She took it with both hands like it was communion. "Straight to the recorder's office," she said, tucking it into her oversized handbag. "No detours." "Send me a photo when it's filed," Ellis replied, "and don't let that receptionist try to stall you with stories about her dog again." Shirley gave a half smile. "If I can survive 2 husbands and a gallbladder rupture, I can survive Linda and her schnauzer." Back at home, Gloria wiped down her counters as if removing fingerprints from a crime scene. She liked clean lines. She liked evidence that disappeared under the weight of order. By the time Tamron returned from her last drop-off, the kitchen smelled of lemon oil and victory. Tamron set the empty tins by the sink. "The woman at 306 asked if you were baking for another church fundraiser. I didn't correct her." Gloria nodded, satisfied. "Let them assume." She didn't say more. She didn't need to. Late afternoon sun cast long shadows through the sunroom blinds as Gloria settled into her armchair with a ledger on her lap. She had begun annotating each page of the household expenses. Yellow highlighter for the main house, pink for the extension, blue for anything Courtney had requested and never repaid. It was meticulous, almost surgical. Every receipt was now a piece of scaffolding in the structure she was quietly reclaiming. The phone rang. It was Devon. Gloria hesitated before answering, watching the caller ID flash twice. "Hi, Mom," he began, his voice tentative. "Hey, quick thing. I was talking with our financial guy this week and he mentioned that refinancing the house might free up some options. You know, if you're open to it. Could help with future planning, consolidate stuff, might even boost the resale value." Gloria adjusted the ledger in her lap and closed it gently. "I appreciate the thought, Devon," she said, her tone warm but impersonal, like a receptionist declining a walk-in appointment. "But I'm already in the middle of my own planning." "Oh," he said after a beat. "Okay, just thought I'd check. I'll be sure to reach out if I need anything," she added, already ending the call in her mind. He lingered on the line a second longer, then hung up without further protest. Gloria set the phone down, stood slowly, and walked to the small locked drawer in the hallway desk. From inside, she removed an envelope, her original trust agreement, and laid it beside the updated receipts. The dining table looked different that night, smaller, warmer. Just 4 place settings, no centerpiece, no performance, just cloth napkins folded with care, a roasted chicken resting on a bed of rosemary, and a pitcher of sweet tea sweating quietly near the edge. The hummingbird cake sat covered on the sideboard, untouched for now. Gloria adjusted the curtains in the sunroom one last time before turning toward the soft knock at the front door. Shirley stepped in first, in a navy blouse with her signature brooch, holding a manila folder tucked under her arm like it might bite. Behind her came Tamron, wearing jeans and a cardigan and trying not to look nervous, followed by Ellis Rawls in his usual gray suit, tie slightly loosened like a man who understood that real power didn't shout. None of them asked where Devin or Courtney were. None of them had to. "I told them dinner was being pushed back this week," Gloria said simply, gesturing toward the dining room. "Didn't say why." Shirley gave her a look that said she approved. Once everyone was seated, Gloria brought out the cornbread dressing. Tamron poured the tea. No one made small talk. The air felt tight, not hostile, just full, like too many truths were waiting for the same breath. Halfway through the meal, Tamron leaned forward slightly, her voice soft but certain. "Will they be mad when they find out?" Gloria didn't look up from her plate. "They'll be shocked," she replied. "That's better." Shirley set down her fork and reached for the folder she'd brought. "I wasn't going to show you this, but I think it qualifies now." She opened it slowly and laid out 3 printed screenshots, text messages blown up for readability. All from Courtney, all recent. One read, "She still drags that foot like she's in a nursing home." Another, "Honestly, her little speeches make my teeth itch. I wish Devin would just tell her to sit down already." The last one cut deeper. "I'm not letting that woman ruin the aesthetic of my future inheritance." Tamron's mouth tightened, but she said nothing. Gloria's eyes moved across the words with a calm that looked like ice but felt like steel. She didn't blink. She didn't comment. She simply pushed her plate forward an inch and folded her hands in her lap. Ellis took the papers without ceremony and slid them into a second file. "I'll log these under supplemental justification," he said. "Disrespect has no legal standing, but intent does, especially when it's documented." Gloria stood and walked to the sideboard. She returned not with cake, but with a slim, leather-bound folio. "I'd like to finalize the trust updates tonight," she said. "Will, emergency directive, health proxy, all of it." Ellis nodded. "We can notarize here. I brought my seal." Gloria handed the folder to him with the same calm grace she'd once used to pass serving dishes around a holiday table. But this was no offering. It was the formal transfer of power. As Ellis and Shirley reviewed the documents, Tamron excused herself to the kitchen and returned with a tray, 4 slices of hummingbird cake, plated, garnished with mint, and served in complete silence. It was the same recipe as always, but it tasted like something else now, like intention. Gloria waited until the last document was signed before she spoke again. "I've asked the clerk's office for a certified seal on the revised deed." Ellis looked up. "You'll have it within 72 hours. She gave a slow nod. "Make sure it's hand-delivered." Outside, dusk had fully settled. The porch light clicked on with a soft hum, casting a golden circle onto the steps. The same porch Courtney had once claimed she might repaint in a more modern shade. Now, that porch belonged, legally, irrevocably, only to Gloria. Sunday morning came with clear skies and the smell of cut grass drifting through the Mayfield neighborhood. Church bells rang in the distance, soft and ceremonial, like memory trying to be music. Gloria stood in her foyer in a navy cotton dress buttoned high at the neck, her shoes polished, her earrings modest. She looked like she might be heading somewhere important, but she wasn't going anywhere, and she wasn't setting the table. By 10, the family group text had started its usual hum, Courtney sending a photo of glazed carrots, Devin replying with a thumbs up, someone adding meme about keeping traditions alive. Gloria read it all without response. She set her phone down, locked the screen, and walked back into the sunroom. Tamron was already there, legs curled under her on the edge of the couch, a textbook open but unread in her lap. "You're really not going?" she asked quietly. "No," Gloria said, pouring herself a small glass of iced tea. "Not this Sunday, or the next. I'm taking a break from tradition." Tamron didn't ask for more. The house felt different now, more watchful. The walls had memory. So did Gloria. By late afternoon, the tone of things had changed. Courtney's Facebook status went up just before 4 o'clock. The post was public. Funny how people who raised you can turn their backs on you when it's no longer convenient. Family shouldn't come with footnotes. There were the usual comments, a few vague hearts. One aunt asked if she was okay. Another cousin offered prayer hands, but Courtney didn't clarify. She didn't need to. The target knew exactly who she meant. Gloria didn't flinch when Tamron read the post aloud. She simply folded a dish towel and tucked it into the drawer like she was sealing a document. At 6:30, her phone buzzed with a text. "Devin, can we talk?" She didn't reply. Instead, she reached into the front hall cabinet and pulled out a small white envelope. Inside was the locksmith's invoice from the day before, 3 new deadbolts, keypad reprogramming, full reset of the extension's smart lock. Gloria had signed it in ink and made sure it was copied in her file of final decisions. By nightfall, Tamron had carried her duffel bag in through the back door and quietly set up in the guest room. No formal announcement, no long explanation. "Just bad vibes at home," she'd said. "I don't want to be in the middle." Gloria nodded, pulled back the extra quilt on the bed, and said nothing more. The next morning, Courtney arrived unannounced. She pulled into the driveway a little too fast in her leased Lexus, stepped out in flats and a slouchy designer cardigan, sunglasses perched on her head like she was too busy for confrontation. She didn't knock. She walked directly around to the extension entrance, the one she'd come and gone from freely for years. She punched in the code. Nothing happened. She tried again. Still nothing. On the third attempt, the keypad lit up red. A mechanical voice spoke, "Access denied. Please contact the property owner." Courtney stared at the screen as if it had personally betrayed her. "Gloria!" she called out, knocking now. "Gloria, this isn't funny." No answer. She rattled the doorknob, then stepped back and fished her phone from her bag. A minute later, Devin pulled up behind her, looking like he hadn't expected to be summoned. "She changed the code," Courtney snapped. Devin blinked. "Well, maybe she had a reason." Courtney turned on him. "She can't just... This is my space too." Devin hesitated, but his voice was low. "Is it? Still?" Courtney didn't respond. Inside the main house, Gloria sat by the window, the curtains drawn just wide enough to see but not be seen. Her hand rested on a fresh copy of the newly recorded deed, the clerk's embossed seal catching the afternoon light. The extension was hers again, fully, legally, and without condition. And Courtney? She wasn't a co-owner anymore. She wasn't even a guest. She was a squatter. The photos were lit just right, morning sun streaming through the French doors, soft throw pillows arranged on the vintage settee, a vase of fresh tulips on the reclaimed wood desk. The caption read, "Garden-side guest loft with private entry, ideal for writers, travelers, and quiet retreats." Gloria clicked publish on the listing, then sat back in her sunroom chair, sipping a slow cup of chamomile as the booking platform confirmed her post. It took less than 48 hours for a neighbor to tag Courtney in a local Facebook thread. "Wait, is this y'all's place? Looks amazing. Courtney, this looks like your mother-in-law's guest house, right? If it is, I'm booking it just for the tea." Courtney saw the post at 9:17 a.m. on a Wednesday and was on the porch by 9:39. She didn't knock. She pounded. "Gloria, are you out of your mind?" Her voice cut across the garden like a weed trimmer in a tulip bed. Inside, Gloria didn't rise from her seat. She flipped the page in her ledger slowly, tracing a line under the words, "Rental insurance clause, checked." The knocks grew louder, the voice shriller. "I'm not kidding. You think you can humiliate me in front of this entire ZIP code?" No answer, not even a flinch. Courtney stood at the locked extension door, red-faced, breathing hard, one wedge heel half sunk into the dirt. She pulled out her phone, thumbed a text furiously, then waited for a reply that didn't come. Inside, Gloria's phone was in a drawer. Powered off, Tamron, barefoot and in a hoodie, passed through the kitchen holding a half-eaten slice of toast. She didn't pause. "You want me to handle her?" "No need," Gloria replied. "She'll tire herself out. Pride burns quick." That afternoon, Ellis stopped by with the manila envelope he carried for moments that required formality. "Ready for the next round?" he asked as Gloria opened the door. She nodded and stepped aside to let him in. He placed the letter on the dining table. Clean font, precise language, zero wiggle room. Formal notice to vacate, unauthorized occupation. It's enforceable? Gloria asked. It's airtight, Ellis replied, and I copied the city clerk for good measure. Squatting isn't romantic when you've got a folder of receipts and a new deed on file. As he notarized the back page, Tamron entered from the hallway, carrying a small box with black wiring spilling out. Got the camera, motion sensor, cloud storage, night vision. Goes above the rear door. Gloria smiled. Install it at dusk. She's more of a sunset storm than a morning fog. Tamron grinned and disappeared out the back. Shirley arrived later, unprompted, a bottle of wine in one hand and a bag from her favorite home boutique in the other. Thought we'd do some staging, she said, breezing past Gloria and into the extension like she owned it. If she's going to throw tantrums in public, let's make sure the place doesn't look like a war zone when the next guest Googles the address. Together they lit candles, fluffed cushions, and swapped out the old welcome mat for one that read simply, reserved. By the time the sun dipped below the magnolia trees, the guest loft looked less like the scene of a family standoff and more like a curated Airbnb feature. Clean, elegant, completely claimed. Shirley stood in the doorway, hands on hips. Make it too classy for them to sulk in, she murmured. Let her sulk somewhere with linoleum and a broken ice machine. Gloria didn't laugh, but the corner of her mouth curled. That night, a new booking request came in. 2 nights, paid in full. She approved it. Ellis's email came through at 6:42 a.m., time-stamped, PDF attached, subject line clinical, RE, verified record of ownership and cost basis. Mayfield Extension. Gloria read it twice before she even took a sip of her coffee. Every attachment was exactly what she had asked for: payment logs, tax receipts, contractor invoices, renovation records, all with her name, all itemized, all indisputable. On the last page was a scanned copy of Courtney's signature under the non-residency clause from 5 years ago, followed by a notation from Ellis in red. Signed without legal duress, no rights conveyed beyond temporary use. She printed 3 copies and placed one in her blue accordion file under extension, legal. Another went into the lockbox. The third she left on the hallway table, folded neatly next to a new ink pad and notary seal. By mid-morning, Courtney had pivoted. Her Instagram story featured a filtered photo of Gloria's sunroom, snapped long ago but reposted now, with the caption, "Sad how fast family forgets who was there. Not that anyone cares, but I kept quiet out of love." Then came the group text. Courtney, Devin, I know you hate drama, but this has gone too far. Can you please remind your mother what this family used to mean? Courtney, again, this is about respect, not paperwork. Courtney, final, she's erasing us. Gloria, from the kitchen counter, scrolled through the messages with one finger, then opened a fresh envelope from her file drawer. Inside was the notarized timeline Ellis had helped her create, date-stamped entries showing every dollar spent on the property, every allowance she'd extended, and every text Courtney had sent that proved otherwise. She sealed it, wrote the clerk's name across the front, and handed it to Tamron, who was tying her shoes by the back door. File it today? Tamron took it without hesitation. Absolutely. As the screen door clacked shut behind her, Gloria turned to the living room and began pulling heirlooms from the display hutch, silver platters from her wedding, pressed glass serving dishes, embroidered napkins her mother had hemmed by hand. Shirley walked in without knocking, paused at the sight of it all. If someone walked in right now, they'd think you're packing to flee. Gloria didn't stop wrapping the fragile teacups. Let them think that. Shirley folded her arms. You know what Courtney's going to say. Gloria set down a dish and met her gaze. They'll think I'm scared. I want them to. A long pause. Shirley nodded once, the way only an old friend could. They'll find out too late what you were actually doing. Outside, Tamron crouched beneath the rear eave, installing the final mount for the security camera. She had angled it down toward the path leading from the extension's side gate to the garden, wide enough to catch everything, discreet enough not to scream surveillance. When she finished, she walked into the guest unit to take final photos for Ellis. What she found made her go still. The antique dresser was gouged, deep, deliberate. One leg of the reading chair was cracked, and the curtain rod had been yanked partially from the wall. The mattress had a slice through the top, not torn by time but by intention. Tamron snapped a dozen photos, uploaded them to a folder labeled Extension, Vandalism, and sent the link to Ellis without a word. An hour later, the insurance response arrived in Gloria's inbox. Claim denied. The reason? Property had been damaged by an unauthorized occupant with no active lease. Liability: Courtney Mayfield. The words hit like gavel cracks in a silent room. Gloria didn't smile. She didn't celebrate. She simply picked up the envelope of heirloom napkin rings and placed it gently into the hope chest at the base of her bed. The trust paperwork sat in a heavy folder across Gloria's lap as she sat in the sunroom, pen in hand, eyes steady on the lines she'd already read twice. The garden beyond the window buzzed faintly with bees and wind, the kind of summer sound that used to mean Sunday pie and iced tea. Now it felt different, purposeful. She signed the final page with quiet finality, then tapped the stack into alignment before closing the leather cover. It was done. Tamron's future had just been put into writing, and no one else's name was on it. Living trust. Early disbursement, Ellis had said. Clean, protected, outside probate. She'll have everything she needs for graduate school. Housing, supplies, even a travel buffer. Gloria had nodded but said little. What mattered wasn't the structure of the fund, it was the clarity of the gesture. This was her answer. To Courtney, to Devon, to silence. That evening, after dinner, just soup and cornbread, no cake, Gloria handed Tamron the envelope. Tamron hesitated. What is this? Open it. Inside was the statement from the newly funded account, a sum large enough to secure housing through 2 years of graduate school, plus an earmarked monthly stipend labeled Education Independent Living. Tamron stared at the figure. Her breath caught. Gloria, you didn't have to do this. I know, Gloria said simply. They made it clear who they valued. So did I. Tamron blinked hard, trying to speak, but her voice cracked instead. She reached for her grandmother's hand. Gloria let her hold it. For a long moment, neither spoke. Later, Tamron slipped out to the garden to call her advisor and confirm she'd be accepting the out-of-state housing offer. Gloria watched from the porch that now bore her name alone. The next morning, Ellis filed the motion for a preliminary no-contact order. Based on escalating behavior, threats of occupation, and property damage, the request was formal, targeted, and fully legal. Gloria didn't even blink as she signed it. We're not waiting for an incident, Ellis said. This paper is your firewall. That firewall would prove necessary faster than expected. At noon, Courtney posted a 10-minute vlog titled, When Family Betrays You. She sat against a blank white wall in a loose hoodie, tears threatening at the corners of her eyes. The video quality was polished. The emotions were not. She took everything. The home, the space we built together. She's even turning my daughter against me. And Devon? He won't say a word, just keeps driving past her house like a lost puppy. The comments poured in, half sympathy, half suspicion. The algorithm didn't care. It boosted her anyway. Gloria didn't respond. She didn't even open the link. Tamron, however, watched the whole thing. Twice. She's acting like the victim, she said, closing her laptop with a hard snap. And she's spinning the story faster than we can update court filings. She's spinning, Gloria replied, stirring a pot of navy beans on the stove. Let her get dizzy. That afternoon, Devon's car passed the house. Again. Second time in 3 days. He didn't stop, didn't get out, just slowed as he passed, eyes flicking to the porch, to the extension, to Tamron's car in the driveway. Gloria watched from the front window, her arms folded, her body still. He's not ready to pick a side, Tamron said behind her. He already has, Gloria answered. He just doesn't want to say it out loud. The envelope was heavy. Certified mail always was, somehow, even when it only held 3 pages and the weight of finality. Gloria sat at the breakfast table, the same one where Devon had once learned fractions with a crayon and where Tamron had peeled oranges every Saturday morning growing up. She held the envelope in her hands, her fingers steady. On the front, in clean block type, was Courtney Mayfield. She slid the papers out slowly, smoothing them with the heel of her palm. Notice of termination of claim to property rights. Mayfield Extension Court filed affidavit of sole ownership. Final warning, 10 days to vacate. Her eyes lingered on the last line. Failure to comply will result in court-ordered removal under Title 60, Section 333 of Oklahoma law. Gloria folded the documents and slid them into the outgoing mail slot near the door. She didn't sigh. She didn't second-guess. She just stood. It was time. The letter landed on Courtney's porch 2 days later, and Gloria knew the moment it did, because the birds outside her window scattered all at once. The scream came next. Sharp, short, and then silence. Gloria didn't flinch. By sunset, Devin was on the line. Not a text this time, a call. His voice sounded like it had run 10 miles just to find the courage. "Can we at least talk before lawyers get deeper into this? Mom, please." Gloria looked out at the garden, at the spot where Courtney had once insisted they plant those awful decorative grasses that now grew wild and disheveled. "It's already deep, son," she said calmly. "I just finally opened my eyes." He didn't reply at first. "I didn't want this to be ugly," he said quietly. She nodded to herself. "Then you shouldn't have married someone who thinks paper matters more than people." She ended the call. The next morning, Gloria opened the blinds and found the herb bed destroyed, uprooted, trampled, half of it blackened with what looked like motor oil. The rosemary bush she'd nursed for 8 years was gone, dug up, torn apart. No note, no name, but no need for either. Gloria installed a second camera that afternoon, mounted high under the porch awning, angled directly at the garden. The other cameras were already running, covering both side entrances, the extension's back door, and the front gate. That night, she reviewed the footage frame by frame with Tamron sitting beside her. "There," Tamron said, freezing one clip. Courtney's silhouette, hoodie, gloves, her hair pulled back in a braid like it was just another jog around the block. Gloria stared at the screen, silent. "Do we send it to Ellis?" Tamron asked. "Not yet," Gloria said. "Let her think no one saw. That's when people get careless." 3 days passed. Courtney didn't respond to the letter, not with words anyway, just more damage, a chipped fence post, a broken solar light, deep scratches on the mailbox. Gloria recorded it all, time-stamped, organized, quietly devastating. On the 10th day, she walked into Ellis's office with a flash drive and a folder. She didn't sit down, just handed it across his desk. "Use whatever you need," she said, "but I want her out. Fully. No loose threads." Ellis glanced at the contents and exhaled through his nose. "She's not going to like this." "I don't need her to like it," Gloria said. "I need her to leave." 3 days later, the judge signed the order. Full transfer of control, financial and legal. Courtney was not only ordered to vacate, she was liable for reparative damages to the property, with a garnishment motion pending. Gloria's hands didn't shake when she signed the court confirmation paperwork. The first truck arrived just after sunrise, white lettering on the side, Gentry and Sons Landscaping, and rumbled to a halt outside the back gate. Gloria stood at the kitchen window in her robe, sipping coffee and watching the crew unload pallets of mulch, spade-headed shovels, and young saplings with roots wrapped in burlap. She didn't open the door to greet them. Ellis had already handled the contracts, and the site plan was posted on the inside of the back fence. Community lot conversion, restricted access, do not disturb main house. It was a legal line drawn in the soil. By noon, the tangled beds of dead grass and oil-drenched herbs were gone. So were the weeds that had grown wild around the cracked pavers. In their place, earth was turned, neat rows cut for vegetables, herbs, and flowering natives. Gloria stood beside a raised cedar bed and pointed to the corner nearest the fence. "Zinnia's there," she said. "I want something that draws bees." The foreman nodded and made the mark. When Shirley arrived later with iced tea and a sun hat that looked more pageant than practical, she took one look at the transformation and let out a low whistle. "From snatched plate to public praise," she said. "Poetic." Gloria didn't smile. But her eyes softened. The next day, a reporter from the Tulsa Gazette showed up, young, polite, and carrying a voice recorder like it was made of glass. He'd seen the permit request and followed the noise of the landscaping crew to Gloria's back gate. "I understand you're converting private space into a community garden?" he asked. "I'm restoring what was taken," Gloria replied, "and giving it a better purpose." He jotted it down without comment, took photos of the flower beds, the compost bins, the row of heirloom tomatoes newly staked along the fence line. By Thursday, the article was up online. "Retired caterer reclaims backyard to feed a neighborhood." A photo showed Gloria from the side, hat brim low, holding a spade. She looked calm, decisive, untouched by noise. Courtney didn't comment publicly, but 2 days later, a new envelope arrived, one with her name on the return address. Inside was the bill. Court costs, damages, repair estimates, filing fees, property depreciation due to misuse. Total, $14,783.41. Gloria slipped it into the drawer beneath her check register and didn't say a word. The court would collect what it needed. She didn't want the money. She wanted the line drawn. The next day, Devin showed up, not to argue, not to defend. He walked up the front steps with his hands empty and his head slightly bowed. "I signed the waiver," he said before she could ask. "Formal withdrawal of any claim on the house. It's done." Gloria didn't move. She studied his face for a long moment. Tired, distant, like someone who'd lived between fences too long. "I just didn't want to burn anything," he added. "I thought if I stayed neutral." "There is no neutral when someone's setting fires," she said. He nodded once and stepped back down the stairs. He didn't ask to come in. Tamron watched from the edge of the porch, arms folded. "That's probably the closest thing to an apology we'll ever get," she said. Gloria didn't answer. She just turned toward the garden, where a row of green shoots had already pushed through the earth. The party was modest, the kind Gloria preferred now. No banners, no RSVP fuss, just folding chairs under string lights and hands wrapped around lemonade glasses. The garden buzzed with late summer life. Tomatoes hung heavy on the vine. Basil perfumed the air, and the zinnias, planted barely weeks ago, stood tall like they'd been waiting all season to bloom. Gloria sat in the center of it all, wearing a linen dress the color of fresh stone and a wide-brimmed hat that shielded her from the late afternoon sun. Around her were 8 women from the garden club, some old friends, some new neighbors. All had brought cuttings, seed packets, and the kind of quiet respect earned, not requested. Tamron moved through the gathering with a tray of lemonade and chilled slices of fruit, her cheeks flushed but smiling. She wore her hair pulled back and had tucked a pencil behind her ear out of habit. She'd become the kind of woman who navigated spaces with a calm that wasn't performative. It had been grown, just like everything else here. The hummingbird cake rested on the table under a glass dome. It was the centerpiece. Not because it was extravagant, but because it had history. The first slice had been claimed long ago. The last one still hadn't been served. Shirley arrived a little late, carrying a gift bag and wearing what Tamron later described as her courtroom strut. She placed the bag in front of Gloria and tapped it once. "You'll want to hang that up," she said, grinning. Inside was a matted, framed photo, black and white, high contrast, cropped tight on Gloria's face as she stood next to Ellis outside the courthouse. She looked unshaken, controlled, triumphant. At the bottom, Shirley had had a plaque engraved, "You versus entitlement, winner, you." The women around them laughed in that knowing way older women laugh, not performative, but earned. Gloria traced the corner of the frame with her thumb. "Thank you," she said. "This goes in the hallway, right where the wedding portrait used to hang." Shirley nodded. "Now that's real estate worth claiming." Later, when the guests had wandered off into pockets of conversation and someone had turned on a quiet jazz playlist through a Bluetooth speaker, Gloria stepped inside and opened her home office. Ellis sat waiting, papers already stacked in order. "You ready?" he asked. She nodded and sat across from him. "Everything. Will, trust, deed locks, Tamron's educational trust included. I want airtight. I want no door left unlocked." He handed her a pen. "Then let's seal it." They went clause by clause. No room for reinterpretation, no space for backdoors. Gloria added one more condition near the end, a restraining clause that limited proximity rights to the property in perpetuity for any individual found liable for previous damage or harassment. Ellis didn't blink. He initialed the margin. As they signed the final page, Tamron walked in with the last slice of hummingbird cake on a ceramic plate. "Someone forgot the guest of honor," she said, placing it in front of her grandmother. Gloria looked down at the slice. Golden, soft, still warm at the center. The same cake Courtney had once pulled from under her fork. She picked up the fork and took a bite. Slow, clean. Outside, someone called out to Tamron, questions about composting zones and raised beds. She excused herself. Ellis packed his papers. There's nothing left they can touch now. Gloria didn't look up from her plate. "Good. I want them to learn what happens when you mistake kindness for surrender." The envelope was cream-colored, heavy stock, and sealed with a single piece of matte tape. No return address, no flourish, just Courtney Mayfield in a clean, handwritten scrawl. Inside, Gloria had placed a printed photo. A snapshot, taken quietly during that long-ago dinner, of her dessert plate, halfway finished, fork still resting on the edge. On the back, in ink so smooth it almost looked typed, she'd written, "I'm not done." No threat. No apology, no plea for understanding, just clarity. Tamron had watched from the hallway as Gloria sealed the flap and slid the envelope into the outgoing bin. After a long pause, she stepped forward and handed Gloria a post-it, pale yellow, with handwriting much younger, but just as sure. "Put this in there too?" she asked. Gloria read it once, then smiled. Tamron's note said, "Neither am I." They tucked it behind the photo and mailed it the next morning. That afternoon, a small bouquet appeared on the front porch. White lilies, eucalyptus, and one clipped sunflower in the center, arranged neatly in a jar that had once held Courtney's pickled onions. There was no card, but it didn't have to be signed. Devin had always bought eucalyptus when Gloria was sick. It had become his silent language. She didn't bring the jar inside. She left it on the steps. By the next morning, it had wilted slightly under the sun. By the next rain, it had tipped over. Gloria didn't move it. Shirley came by 2 days later, arms full of library books and another one of her just checking in excuses. She spotted the flowers immediately and raised an eyebrow. "He brought those, didn't he?" Gloria didn't answer. She wiped down the porch railing with a cloth and kept her eyes on the garden. "You don't have to forgive, Gloria," Shirley said, her voice softer now. "But you also don't have to carry it." Gloria folded the cloth in half. "I'm not carrying anything. I just know where I won't go again." Shirley let out a breath. "Distance can be a gift, you know. Most people just waste it trying to close the gap." "I'm not most people." "No," Shirley said. "You never were." Inside, a different kind of letter waited on Gloria's dining table. This one, official, stamped with a seal from the Oklahoma Historical Preservation Board. It had taken months to gather the paperwork, and Ellis had written the application language himself, lacing in architectural notations and legacy provisions like a lawyer who understood what legacy meant to a woman who had fed her neighborhood long before they ever noticed her garden. The house, her house, had been registered for historic status, not just for its craftsman bones or wraparound porch, but for what had happened there, for what she'd protected. The listing included the guest extension, the garden plot, the family deed, and a footnote that named Gloria Mayfield, retired caterer and legal conservator, as its primary preserver. Gloria hadn't told Courtney, she hadn't told Devin either, but Ellis had made sure that the designation would protect it all. Title, structure, even alterations. A court couldn't touch it, and no new spouse, child, or ghosted apology could ever rewrite it. As Gloria filed the document away, Tamron entered holding her laptop. "Someone tagged me in Courtney's new blog," she said, leaning on the doorframe. "She's calling herself a disinherited survivor. Says she's going to start writing a memoir." Gloria didn't blink. "Let her write," Tamron chuckled. "She's saying you use the house to punish generational femininity. I don't even know what that means." Gloria smiled faintly. It means she still hasn't learned what silence costs. The folding tables were covered in linen this time, real linen, not plastic-coated fabric from the discount bin. Glass jars held floating candles, nestled between platters of roasted vegetables, pulled chicken with lemon glaze, and cornbread baked into golden squares. The scent of rosemary and garlic drifted through the evening air, caught between laughter and the warm rustle of garden leaves. Gloria stood beneath the arbor, one hand resting on a chair, the other holding a folded speech she had no intention of reading. The backyard glowed, solar lights lining the fence, string bulbs overhead, a fire pit flickering quietly near the compost bins. This wasn't a party, it was a reckoning. Local women had gathered from across the county, small business owners, single mothers, retirees turned entrepreneurs. Some wore cardigans, others crisp blazers. No one dressed for ceremony, but every face showed attention. Tamron moved through them like a current, her posture straight, her energy focused. She wasn't handing out lemonade anymore. She was guiding conversations, introducing women to each other, translating legalese with a quiet authority that Gloria hadn't seen in her at 20. But now it looked permanent. After dinner, Tamron stood in front of the largest planter box and cleared her throat. "I want to thank my grandmother for opening her home," she said, voice steady but warm. "And not just her home, her story, because there's a difference between surviving a fight and documenting what happened." She did both. The women murmured in approval, a few nodding slowly. "We're taught to let things go," Tamron continued, "to keep peace, to be nice. But documentation is not bitterness. Trusts, titles, records, those are generational defense. That's how you keep power from being erased." A few heads turned toward Gloria. She didn't smile. She just looked back. Unapologetic. Tamron lifted a small pamphlet from the edge of the table and held it up. "These are free. Please take one. It walks you through how to file a title in your own name, how to protect your property from coercion, what questions to ask a lawyer, and how to document every favor that ever gets turned against you later." Laughter rippled, the kind that came from shared scars. Gloria stepped forward then, slowly, hands behind her back. "I thought I was just reclaiming my house," she said. "Turns out I was reclaiming my time, too." That landed, soft but exact. As women reached for pamphlets and cups were refilled, Tamron stepped down and crossed to Ellis, who stood at the edge of the gathering in his familiar gray suit, one hand in his pocket, the other holding a ginger ale. "Not bad for a kid who once thought title insurance was a brand of shoe," she said. Ellis chuckled. "You're sharp, always were." Tamron raised an eyebrow. "You thinking what I'm thinking?" He handed her a small card. "Summer internship. Our office. We'll train you to build the walls before people even realize they need protecting." Tamron took it. Her fingers didn't tremble. From the center of the garden, Gloria watched it unfold, the passing of something that had never been handed to her, only taken and taken again until she'd learned to claw it back. Now she gave it freely, and as the night deepened, with candles still burning and Shirley already drafting a fundraising idea in the corner, Gloria walked toward the arbor where the first tomatoes had begun to turn red. She looked down at the soil, turned, healed, and fertile. This time she wasn't planting alone. The new welcome mat at the extension read, "Quiet Minds Welcome." No names, no labels, just an invitation. Inside, the space had been transformed again, no trace of tantrums or broken furniture. Instead, soft rugs, a writing desk positioned beside the window, locally made pottery on the shelves, and a row of fresh journals stacked in a basket marked "Use What You Need." The calendar on the wall listed the first 3 guests, one from Nebraska, another from Atlanta, and a woman from Santa Fe who wrote essays about salt. Gloria didn't know them, and that was the point. They weren't arriving to pry. They were arriving to write. Outside, the garden rustled in late morning breeze, and Gloria watched from the porch as Tamron adjusted the mailbox plaque that now read simply, "The Mayfield Extension, Residency Program." "You sure about the name?" Tamron asked, brushing dust from the brass letters. "It's not about who lived here before," Gloria said. "It's about who'll grow something now." Tamron smiled and returned to her laptop, which was perched on the porch table beside 2 highlighters and a half-eaten apple. The community blog was live now, Legal Basics for Women Defending Inherited Property, co-authored by T. Mayfield, and featuring downloadable forms, notary guides, and a growing list of lawyers across the state willing to answer questions for free. Above the fold, in bold serif font, "Protect what raised you." Shirley arrived just before noon, wearing her oversized sunglasses and holding a wrapped box shaped exactly like a plaque. She handed it to Gloria without ceremony and waited. Gloria peeled back the brown paper, slowly, like it might break. The plaque inside was black wood, brushed brass lettering. The Mayfield House, restored by matriarch. She held it a moment too long. "You know," Shirley said, voice low, "you don't have to hang it where people can see. Just hang it where you can." "I will," Gloria said, and meant it. They sat for a while on the porch, watching Tamron upload another article to the blog and wave at the mailman without looking up from her screen. Gloria sliced 2 pieces of hummingbird cake and passed one to Shirley on a china plate that had belonged to her own grandmother. As the afternoon stretched quiet and slow, a notification buzzed on Gloria's phone. One new email. Subject line, "I'm sorry." It was from Devin. The body was short, no excuses, no defense. Just a few lines about missing things he never realized were worth holding on to. And one final sentence. "I'm proud of you. I should have said that sooner." Gloria read it once, then closed the app. She didn't reply. She set the phone screen down and handed Shirley a linen napkin. "Is it too late in the season to plant another round of herbs?" Gloria asked. Shirley took a bite of cake and shrugged. "Not if you know what you're doing." "I do now," Gloria said. They sat like that. 2 women who had seen enough winters to stop fearing them. The garden stretched wide behind them. The extension was quiet, waiting for its next visitor. And on the edge of the porch railing, a hummingbird hovered, wings beating so fast it looked still. Gloria smiled. The title update arrived on a cool September morning, folded neatly inside an embossed envelope from the county clerk's office. Gloria opened it with a brass letter opener, careful not to tear the corners, and slid the page out with steady hands. Her name, Ann Tamron's, no one else's. The ink felt permanent, not because it couldn't be changed, but because it wouldn't need to be. It was the kind of paper that could outlast storms, wills, and whispers. Gloria laid it flat on the table beside a cup of black tea. No cream, no sugar, just like her. That weekend, word got around, quietly, like gossip tired of its own voice. Courtney and Devin had moved. A 3-bedroom rental off the bypass in Claremore. Neutral siding, no porch swing. A backyard that barely counted as a yard. No goodbye, no apology, just absence. Gloria didn't mark the moment. She didn't announce it. She simply stood in the den later that evening, holding the remote like a passport to some other country. On the screen, a home video from a Thanksgiving 14 years ago. Courtney laughing too loud. Devin carving a turkey that Gloria had already sliced perfectly. The camera angle listing to the side, as if even the camcorder had felt off balance. Gloria watched in silence. Then fast-forwarded. Another clip. Tamron, small and gap-toothed, twirling in a dress that hadn't matched anything but her mood. Gloria smiled, paused, saved. She scrolled to the next file, a birthday where Courtney had opened a gift and said, "That's it?" with a smirk. Delete. Another, Devin nodding along as someone made a joke about Gloria's retirement hobbies. Delete. She kept some, deleted most, not out of anger, just curation. When Shirley arrived an hour later with a 6-pack of cream soda and 2 mason jars, Gloria was still holding the remote. "You good?" Shirley asked, lowering herself onto the couch without waiting for an answer. "I'm edited," Gloria said. Shirley let out a laugh that came from the chest. "You ought to put that on a t-shirt." They sat there a while, no words needed. Shirley didn't press, didn't offer advice. She just poured 2 sodas and nudged Gloria's glass toward her with a knuckle. The screensaver kicked in, just zinnias. The next morning, the front gate creaked open at precisely 9 a.m., and Tamron stepped through dragging a small carry-on and holding a canvas-wrapped package under one arm. Her hair was longer, her steps were faster. But the hug she gave Gloria was still the kind that made you believe in home as a verb. "I brought something," she said, handing over the wrapped bundle. Inside was a loaf, dense, golden, slightly cracked on top. It smelled of clove, brown butter, and something else Gloria couldn't quite place. "It's a spiced molasses banana blend," Tamron said, "but with ground pecans and orange zest soaked in bourbon. I call it Legacy Loaf." Gloria raised an eyebrow. "That sounds illegal." Tamron grinned. "Then it's authentic." They unwrapped it together in the kitchen. Gloria fetched 2 plates from the china cabinet, the good ones, with tiny blue tulips around the rim. She sliced into the loaf slowly, watching steam rise from the center. She took a bite. Let it sit, chewed twice, then nodded. "Let's serve it warm," Gloria said. Tamron tilted her head. "You think people will appreciate it?" Gloria turned to face her, eyes clear. "With boundaries." They shared the first 2 slices with Shirley, who had wandered over with a wild story about her neighbor mistaking oregano for weed and nearly getting the HOA involved. The 3 of them sat on the porch, bare feet on the step, hands sticky with orange glaze. Down the street, someone was pressure washing a fence. Farther off, church bells rang faintly. The extension door stood ajar, letting in the breeze. A new resident had checked in that morning, a painter from Michigan. Gloria hadn't met her yet, but the welcome note, handwritten by Tamron, was already on the bed. The garden buzzed with bees. Tomatoes were ripening again. The cake dome had a new home on the hallway shelf, right beneath Shirley's courtroom plaque, and as Gloria leaned back, balancing her plate on her knee, she looked out over the soil, the porch, the house, and everything that now carried her name because she'd refused to let it be stolen. She took another bite and said nothing more, because she'd already said it all.